I mean, it's a battle out there. Both teams, like I said, are physical, and the intensity is ramping up, and that's just how it is this time of year.
All right, that's James Schwartz after Game 2 of the Stars and Blues series in the second round. This is the KSDK Sports Plus podcast. We got a full house in here today. Frank Cusumano, Mike Bush, and Craig Moeller making his debut on the program. You guys been watching?
Can we say backed by popular demand, mostly his own?
You guys didn't know that you missed me, but you missed me.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, we did last week, yeah.
So, Blues, right now when we're recording this, it's a tie series. They're heading back to Dallas. Does anybody feel any differently after seeing that second game compared to the first game? We still pretty high on the Blues or not so much?
Well, we're high, but it doesn't change anything. I think we all knew going in that this was going to be a long series. And look, if I'm not a betting person, well, although I did just lose a bet on Drew Lock, but you just knew that Ben Bishop was going to come out and play a great game too, and you just had a feeling Dallas is going to win the game. It's just the way things work in the NHL playoffs now.
I mean, the one thing we know is when they were up against Winnipeg, the feeling was there's no way the Blues are going to be able to win in that building in Winnipeg because it's such a tough place to play. And they went ahead and they won 3 games in Winnipeg. So we know they've been a pretty good road team in the playoffs. And I think you said it best, Frank, when this series started. This is not going to be an easy series, and it's going to go probably 7 games.
The physicality, though, I mean, just the intensity back and forth. And, I started to go, at times you could just feel the energy going back and forth between the teams, but it started to get a little chippy, especially towards the end of Game 2, and you saw some of the shots, Perron getting into it a little bit, and then we had Tarasenko, mixing it up.
I've got that down here. They just harassed Tarasenko all night. You and Cam actually talked about it a lot on the post-game show afterwards. Jamie Benn was on him almost the whole game, just on him the whole time and kind of upset him a little bit.
Smart on their part, though. That's what you do.
If you're not as good as Tarasenko, you try to beat the tar out of him.
Yeah.
And that's what they did. Now the Blues got a counter. And I thought that Parayko, I thought Pat Maroon a little bit later in the game started to, kind of set the physicality. So they have to counter, and I imagine with their head coach, they will.
Here's what's interesting about the building in Dallas. There are not going to be any St. Louis fans in that building because they're not allowing St. Louisans to buy tickets.
Isn't that weak?
It is so weak. It is ridiculous. First of all, there wouldn't be that many anyway.
That's why I'm confused. Like, sometimes this happens, like Cubs and Brewers series, they do this a lot, when Cubs fans just invade Miller Park.
Yeah.
But this is Dallas and St. Louis. I don't even know why this was necessary to restrict the ticket sales.
They fear the Blues, and they're not going to give them any opportunity to have any type of support down there at all. And, good for them, but it's still really weak.
It is amazing that these teams go into these buildings where it's just everybody in the world against you, like the Blues did in Winnipeg, which seats 15 but is as passionate as any atmosphere. And they come up and they win games. That's what I find fascinating about the league because it's so hostile.
And some teams actually thrive off of it. So we'll see what the Blues do.
So Jamie Benn, it always seems, just kills the Blues, no matter if it's the playoffs or whatever. And he's always a pest. I've got down here, maybe get some conversation here. Who in the past, really in the playoffs, comes to mind as like a Blues pest?
Mike Ricci, who had the biggest nose in the history of sports, and just a nasty, mean-spirited guy, probably a fine person in real life, but did I hate this guy. And the Blues hated him. Yeah, he was easy to hate.
Or if you go further back, Chris Chelios, he used to drive the Blues crazy.
He was just so good, too.
He was good, but both Detroit and Chicago.
Prediction?
I hadn't heard that name in a while. Yeah, that's going back.
Prediction on the series going forward, how many games do you think it takes for the Blues to win?
I think 7. I think this series is going 7 games.
Yeah, going in, I was thinking Blues in 6, but it may go.
Could it end a week from the day in Dallas? I don't know. I'd probably lean towards 7 also.
Well, they went 7 2 years ago. Was it 2 or 3 years ago?
2.
20, it was 20.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, real quick before we get past the Blues, I wanted to ask you guys: have you guys been thinking? Has Tarasenko been playing a more physical game? Like it seemed like I always thought of him as such a finesse player, but I've been watching him. Maybe it's just his own level of frustration with bodies hanging on him and everything, but it seems to me like he's been pushing back a little more.
Well, I don't know if that's true. It's hard for me to get that perspective. What I do know is he's making some really good skaters look really bad because he makes moves that that nobody else can make in the league. It's really pretty impressive.
When he went through that drought earlier in the year, it's clear that Coach Berube said that you have got to go to the net. And in game one, he was the best player on the ice because he got to the net.
He tried doing, I was going to bring that up. He used his body just to get behind a guy and straight up just hold him off and almost score.
Yeah.
He tried that move again.
He is a tank.
Yeah,
I mean, he is a tank.
He's built.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Drew Lock and the NFL draft.
Frank.
Hey, no, we're not going to beat up Frank.
Somebody give Frank a tissue. Where's that box of tissues?
I'm going to make Frank look kind of smart here, at least kind of smart. Here, listen to this.
No organization has shown more interest in Drew Lock than the Denver Broncos. You know why? Because he's 6'4", 225, who just threw for 12,000 freaking yards in college with 99 touchdowns.
All right, so it didn't happen in the first
good.
round, but Drew did go to Denver. I think it's a good fit for him. Frank, go ahead. You guys.
Yeah, I think it's a good spot for him because he can learn under Joe Flacco. He won't get the blank pounded out of him the first couple of years and ruin a career like they do to some young quarterbacks. So I think it's a good situation. He lost a lot of money, on Thursday and Friday, but I think he'll still be fine.
I have a feeling that they'll be calling for Drew Lock pretty early in the season. Because Joe Flacco, his best days are behind him.
Yeah.
So we don't know what he's going to look like in Denver. And those Denver fans are not patient people. And they're going to be, I think they'll be cheering for Drew Lock to get into the game.
I just think he's got so many tools and he's got so much. And I know, people have said, oh, how's he perform in the big games and this? And that's another discussion.
I got some stats here.
Yeah, well, the MVP of the National Football League, Patrick Mahomes, didn't beat a top 25 team his entire collegiate career either. And you know what the thing was interesting is they talked about Lock's, the size of his hands being a factor in him dropping. He's a size 9. And that's what Jared Goff has, is a size 9. It's just crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
What else is that? What else were you hearing? That's why he's dropped.
I don't know. I mean, look, the week before on Friday on Get Up, the ESPN program, it was Todd McShay saying he's going 10 to Denver. Kuiper had him 11 to 15 in that range, and then all of a sudden he drops to the 40s.
I can't believe those teams at the end, especially the Patriots. I thought the Patriots would take him with that last pick, groom him behind Brady, because they got to see that day coming eventually. But I guess Locke wasn't good enough for them to do that. I can't believe it.
I think he's going to, and I felt you could come back and say, okay, Gabbert, what about that? Because I thought Gabbert had some good tools as well. But I really think Locke is suited to do good things in the league.
Yeah, don't you think that he is better than Blaine Gabbert?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
It's just a little bit more touch, a little more finesse, throws a deeper ball better.
It's the 4 to 5 inches between the ears and not that there's any. I don't have anything negative about Gabbert at all, but Locke has shown such maturity, and I think the commitment to coming back, learning under Dooley, all these things that he shows that hey, I can pick up this style or that, and it wasn't like he had just a phenomenal group of athletes around him. Mizzou was good, but I mean. Compared to some of the teams.
Yeah, and I hate kind of all the sympathy for him. But let's not forget, he's 22. He's making millions. He's a good-looking guy. He's playing in the NFL.
He'll do all
His
right.
life is just fine.
Michael Porter Jr. and Drew Lock in Denver now hanging out. That's kind of cool. A lot of local guys getting drafted here. I just have a couple on this list. Terry Beckner Jr., Sutton Smith, Austin Seibert from Belleville West, and who was the guy from Parkway? Frank, wasn't there another guy?
Yeah, there was.
There was one or two other people. What do you think this says about the local football talent?
I was going to ask you about that, Frank. I mean, you've talked a lot about the basketball talent that's coming out of St. Louis. How's the football talent?
Well, it's pretty good. I mean, we're not turning out like first-round draft choices, but every year we seem to get about 4 or 5 in the area. And I think it's all because of these great youth programs and these guys like committing to football almost like 12 months a year. And just maxing out skill and strength-wise. I think it's really the youth football in this town is just off the charts good.
Terry Beckner Jr., top recruit in America when he came out of East St. Louis, goes in the 7th round. That's got to be a little disappointing, right?
Back-to-back ACLs. That's really tough. It's kind of a Robbie Fabry thing.
Yeah.
He's going to get a chance to play in league. He'll
Well,
be in our studio, by the way, tomorrow at 3 o'clock.
He is one of the strongest guys I've ever seen play in person. He just throws people around, so I think he could really make an impact there.
I thought the story that you had on Sutton Smith out of Howell going to Northern Illinois, I thought his story was great, Frank. I mean, a guy that's, again, out to show the world what he can do, and the highlights that you were showing from him, pretty amazing.
His dad was texting me as he started to slip to the 6th round. He goes, I'll tell you what, somebody's going to get a steal here today.
Yeah.
Where do you think, I mean, he's pretty small. Where do you think they're going to put him?
Well, he's one of those pass rushing specialists that we now have in the league that weigh like 250, that not truly a defensive end, not truly a linebacker, just kind of a mix.
Did you want to touch on Emmanuel Hall?
Yeah, so that
Another
was the
Mizzou
other
guy.
thing. I'm sitting there waiting, and you're thinking, you're seeing him at the top talent available, and again, whether it's injury concern or whatever, for him to fall off and wind up. Fortunately he signed with the Bears, and I, as a Bear guy, no Bears. No, I'm excited for that, but he's going to have his work cut out because they've got a pretty good young receiving core that they're building around. But he, again, as an undrafted, signing, he's got a shot to be something again.
He's just got to stay healthy.
Yeah.
He's terrific when he's
stay
healthy.
on the field,
Yeah.
and he's awesome.
And
you said he was just absolutely setting some things on fire at the combine.
Oh, he had, I forget which, I don't know if it was just like his broad jump or something. He set a combine record in one of the skills, I'm pretty sure. So he's definitely one to watch out for. Let's go to Cardinals.
Yes.
So first thing I got here is just the roller coaster of Marcell Ozuna. That's just what comes to my mind every time I watch a game.
Who needs Christian Yelich when you've got Marcell Ozuna?
He's much more entertaining in the fact you never know what you're going to see from this guy. And then I hadn't even thought about this. He's only the third player in history to have 10 home runs for the Cardinals before May 1st.
Pujols and McGuire are the others. Yeah.
McGuire's 1998 season. That just seems incredible based on like every other night we're showing a low light.
He is playing great, and when he went into this year after last year, which was a big disappointment, the fact that he was playing for his contract life, the fact that he was going to be a free agent, you knew he was inspired to do something, and he's doing it. And he makes that lineup so much. When you've got a strong Marcell Ozuna from a couple of years ago in that lineup becomes so much better.
You said you never know what you're going to get. The one thing that I know you're going to get every single at bat, he is not going to waste his swing. You don't see him just kind of waving at that pitch. I mean, it's like out of his shoes. He might miss it by a foot, but I mean,
when he
he's
misses,
swinging
it
out
is
of his
ugly.
shoes.
But
Yeah, and he's got 26 RBIs in 27 games.
It's impressive.
You
In
take
this homestand, too, he scores 10 runs in 9 games.
Yeah.
He's just off the charts.
The arm's looking a little better, too. He had a nice throw the other night.
Talked about that today, or yesterday.
What did he say?
Well, that it's getting a little stronger each day, and he's a little less fearful about letting it all hang out.
Well,
So
and he, like a couple of weeks ago, after that Pittsburgh series, when it was really cold, he came back and he was telling us in the locker room how he just hates playing in cold weather and feels like he can't do everything he wants to do. So as it warms up, kind of like, I think Matt Holliday, every year he started slow, and then when it got warmer and warmer, it seemed like he was just better and better, and I think we might see that.
If Ozuna's getting better and better,
already,
it's going to be an unbelievable year.
He's his average 264 right now with an OPS. You take his on base plus slugging at 1,010. I mean, that's crazy to have that big of a disparity. I mean, obviously he's crushing with the home runs, but the other thing is you look at his defense, and everybody's been down. Of course, there was the acrobatic play off the wall that wasn't, but. I was watching Sunday afternoon. He covered a tremendous amount of ground. I think he's deceptively able to cover some more ground than maybe people think because he's such a big guy. But
somebody thought he was good before he got here because he won a Gold Glove.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I think that was for center field at the time, maybe, or was it left?
No,
I think it was left
Yelich
field.
was playing center.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any way you think he's back next year? I mean, coming into this year, I would have said no way. I don't know if he wants to be. I don't know if the Cardinals are willing to.
Maybe if it was 95-5 going in, maybe it's 85-15.
Yeah.
There's a long way to go this season. And I mean, the person who's supposed to replace him is Tyler O'Neill, and we don't know what we have in Tyler yet. So we'll see.
And I think, again, with the questions about Bader, Bader's got this amazing defensive ability, and he's covering ground, making things happen on the bases, but you got to hit over 200.
Well, and you cannot mess with this lineup right now.
Right. No.
I mean, everybody is performing.
And the manager is trying to be as diplomatic as possible. He's not going to come out like tomorrow or before the game in Washington and say, I'd just like to make an announcement, Harrison Bader is no longer a starting outfielder. We all know that. He knows that. You're not benching 343 hitting Jose Martinez. He's got to play every day until proven otherwise.
And you look
And
at Fowler.
Fowler's playing great.
Yeah, he's at
Fowler's
316.
And he's playing a good
316,
center field.
yeah.
Yeah.
He is playing good center field.
You take a look, and I pulled, and I don't want to get too stat headish on you guys, but I was taking a look at the WAR. Do you know what Fowler's WAR is already this season?
It's 1.6,
1
isn't it?
Well, I saw 1.2. That was
Okay.
from Fangraphs today. But, DeYoung is at 2.0, and then as far as I could tell, I think Fowler was next highest at 1.2. I know, I was looking at Goldie and a few others. There's some folks that are starting to get up there. But the bottom line is Fowler has really been playing well.
You don't.
got
I mean,
Ozuna
you don't
and-
take any of those guys out of the lineup right now
way.
because it's working.
So we talked about this last week, Mike, Frank, and I. Craig, who's your most impressive guy so far this year?
If you guys aren't loving Paul DeYoung, I mean, I don't know. Was that the consensus?
That's
feeling?
who we all talked
Well,
about.
we
somebody
talked about
different.
different people. We talked
You know,
about
we talked about
Fowler.
him.
We talked about Ozuna.
So Fowler's probably the one that I think has probably outperformed what most of the fan base.
Well, everybody
here in
was
St.
ready
Louis,
to
yeah,
trade him for nothing.
and you see him with the bounce in his step. Just even the way he's positioned, he's so much more settled at the plate. He just, he looks like Dexter Fowler again.
And as I
that's
said
awesome.
last week, just because of his personality, and as Frank has talked about this before, when you've got a happy Dexter Fowler, that really helps the chemistry of the clubhouse because he's just got this magnetic personality. He smiles a lot, and people are
Yeah.
kind of drawn to him.
But the key to the season is the guy who pitched today, Jack Flaherty.
For sure.
Because with Miles Michaelis maybe regressing and Adam Wainwright being 37 and Carlos being hurt, you have to have a number one starter. And he looked like a number one starter today.
I think, back to Fowler, I think Fowler and Wong have benefited more than anybody from Mike Schilt. It just seems like they're different under him. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or they know they're going to be in there every day or what it is, but those two just look like different players.
And in the previous manager's defense, when Colton Wong's hitting 170,
true.
it's tough to trot him out there
Yeah.
when Jed Jerko's coming off a 30 home run
That's
season.
true.
So let me get your take on this. All right, we have a new hitting coach, Jeff Albert, comes in, right, and he's working with these guys. All of a sudden, Wong, I mean, he's cooled off since the hot start, but he's still, getting his occasional hits. You take a look at DeYoung's approach is much better. You don't see him chasing, the sliders. You don't see
But
him.
he's also healthy. That helps.
Well, that's a big deal. That's a
Yeah.
big deal. But his approach at the plate is much better. I think we're starting to see some improvements with, O'Neill. And I think a lot of these guys, I think when they first started off, we had that rough start for the first, week or whatever with so much up in Milwaukee. But do you guys think that's been a positive influence
Well, I
as far?
remember
You think
in
it's-
spring training when they weren't hitting at all, people were ready to
Yeah.
throw Jeff Albert off a cliff.
But they also said you've got to give it time to work. And I'm just wondering if you're hearing anything, Frank or Corey, if
I
you're
do
hearing anything
think the
when you're
most
in the
overrated position in professional sports is
Hitting
the hitting
coach,
coach in
yeah.
Major League Baseball.
That's
So
the guy that takes the hit if the team,
Yeah.
is
it's
usually.
not like, John Mabry didn't get there at, 11 o'clock in the afternoon and work like a dog to try to help these guys. I don't know. Look, I know there's different philosophies, and maybe this guy's working right now, but it's up to the player. We have a healthy Paul DeYoung. We have Colton Wong who gets to play every day. We have Dexter Fowler who's not battling depression. I think that has more to do with their seasons.
I agree, but I also think we saw a lot of guys that were chasing a lot of really crappy pitches, and they looked like they were just guessing and whatever. And again, that may have been a product of a whole mess that was going on that maybe not everybody's privy to or whatever. But they do look more settled. And again, DeYoung, not only on the offensive side, but on the defense as well. I mean, that guy, who
He's
else?
solid.
Yeah, I mean, what more could you ask?
Not much.
He's looking
Nothing.
great.
Let's get to some news that actually just happened today on Sunday when we're recording this. Alex Reyes, another setback. He had a bad start at Memphis. He punched the wall, I think is the report, with his non-throwing hand, broke his pinky. Probably going to be out for a month. He can still throw, but they're going to send him to Jupiter, and he's not going to pitch in actual games. Do we think we're going to see – it's just another setback. Do we ever think we're going to see the Alex Reyes we were thinking we were going to see when he was coming up.
Well, Craig and I were discussing this in between commercial breaks during the Sunday 5 p.m. newscast. He's more of a glass half full kind of guy.
I need to buy a guy to play the tuba and walk around behind Mike and go womp womp womp.
I am not convinced that we'll ever see the Alex Reyes that we were kind of hoping for. I'm just not convinced that
he's going to be all right.
I'm not. And it seems like every time we think he's taking a step forward, he takes 2 steps backward. And so, for him to do what he did after the situation that he is in, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well,
I agree.
You're talking about 2 season-ending injuries. You're talking about his baby daughter having cancer, and now this thing, which will, the next time we'll see him would be in July, best case scenario out of the bullpen. So I don't know if he's going to be a factor this year. I still think, he's 24, and he really is a nice kid who cares and works hard.
Who's got incredible talent.
Yeah. So I'm not betting against him.
But Craig has him pegged for the starting rotation before the end of the year.
I'm
I'm saying no way.
No chance.
I am telling you, I think the plan, you stretch him out. With the safety, you can control pitch counts. You can do all that stuff down at the camp in Jupiter. And if we have a need, and who knows, again, it's going to depend. What's Walker look like? He's coming back tomorrow. Hopefully he's fine. Is Waino still able to do what he's doing later in the season? I just think that this could be, in some small way, a blessing in that they won't be able to rush him into the bullpen, and it gives him more time to cook and to see how things go. I'm not as bullish as Mike would project that I would have, but I do. I'm still optimistic. The guy's stuff is just unbelievable. He just needs to
Craig does
listen.
not have a Cy Young vote.
This is the thing that worries me most about the Cardinals is their starting pitching. Frank just went through it. Jack Flaherty is still young, pitched great today. Hopefully that continues, but there will be ups and downs. We know that. Is Miles Michaelis, is he going to regress? Because if he does, that's a problem.
I don't think there's any way
Adam
we can
Wainwright,
expect for him to be like he was last
37.
year.
What are we going to get from him? Sometimes he looks like the old Adam Wainwright, but we know the history of that, and we're not so confident that that's going to continue. Michael Wacha, can he stay healthy? Dakota Hudson, not sure what we have there. To me, if they're really serious about being a contender and go get Keuchel, they're not going to, but that's what I would do.
Yeah. Let's do some revisionist history here to wrap up this episode. There's a lot of Cardinals out there who have kind of been killing it for their other teams over the end of last year, the start of this year.
Luke Voigt.
Would you want? That's the first guy on here. Would you want any?
You couldn't use Luke Voigt.
Not anymore.
Because he can't play the outfield, and you have a fella named Paul Goldschmidt at first.
Right, but before we got Goldschmidt, if you would have known Voigt was producing like this, would you have pursued him?
Goldschmidt's still the safer bet. And
Goldie, I couldn't be happier that he's here. I love the man. I'm so happy that he's here. But I'm just saying, looking back.
But you have to be impressed by Voigt.
And right now, he is single-handedly carrying that team because everybody's hurt.
Yeah, they got all the injuries.
He's got 22 home runs.
You know
in
who else
65
I'd like to have?
games.
Tommy Pham.
That's the next guy on the list.
Of all the guys on the list,
That's
it's Voigt, Pham, Piscotty, Gonzalez, Greg Holland.
And so far, that looks like the worst trade, I think.
I never understood that trade.
Yeah.
I just think he was pretty outspoken, and I just think the Cardinals didn't like that, and so they found a way.
Yeah, I like Dexter Fowler, but Tommy Pham's numbers, and he's a better defender.
Oh,
So in comparison.
Tommy Pham makes that lineup even better than it is already.
I think one of the most interesting ones here is Marco Gonzalez, especially since we haven't seen from Tyler O'Neill really a whole lot yet. Gonzalez is 5-0 this year for the Mariners, 2.80 ERA. He has the most innings pitched in baseball, which the Cardinals could certainly use right now.
And they could use a left-hander,
and
too.
he's 5th in pitcher WAR. That Gonzalez for O'Neill trade.
But I have to
think?
say, when they made that trade, I
loved it.
I thought it was a great trade, and I thought Marco Gonzalez may be another, Bud Smith or something along those lines. I didn't think he was going to be what he is, so.
And it's still early on O'Neill too.
Yeah.
Let's see. Let's give O'Neill a season and see how he does.
He was drafted by Dan Kantrovitz, who's now running the Oakland A's. And I remember as soon as he drafted Gonzalez, and he said he had a breaking pitch like Michael Wacha, and he was going to be special. And then he did win a couple of games in the same postseason. But you just kind of felt, I don't know. And
there was so many other. you had other guys that were.
Well, yeah, they have so many
a lot
arms.
better.
Well, it's going to be interesting to see what Weaver does as well, with that trade. And again, who wouldn't do that trade right now. I'd still do it again. To get Goldie in here is awesome, but I think Weaver may settle in to be a decent pitcher as well. So
last one, just because it feels like we're getting ripped off. Greg Holland has 5 saves and a 0.00 ERA in 8 games for the Diamondbacks.
What the heck is that?
I know.
How do you explain that?
hey,
Yeah, the moral to the story is have a spring training if you're a closer.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why the Cardinals are hesitant. Maybe they're having internal
definitely.
conversations
Yeah.
about Kimbrel and Keuchel, but
Yeah.
Kimbrel could be Holland 2.0 for the
Yeah,
Cardinals.
but they could have a spring training for Keuchel and then bring him up in July.
In fairness, Jordan Hicks is the second most saves in the National League. I mean, he's doing pretty well.
Closer is not a weakness with this club.
for sure. All right, that's going to wrap up episode 3 of the Sports Plus podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Come back next week.